She was preparing for what was supposed to be the most important event of her career, a grand party hosted by one of the wealthiest families in the city. Aisha Carter moved quietly through the halls of the Langford estate, her hands carefully adjusting the final details of the floral arrangements, checking the table settings and ensuring that every crystal glass sparkled under the warm glow of the chandeliers. Tonight was more than just another event for her. It was an opportunity to prove her worth, to show that her skill, dedication, and heart could shine even in a world that often judged her by the color of her skin rather than her talent. The Langford estate itself was a monument to wealth and power, with walls adorned with priceless art, floors that gleamed like mirrors, and rooms so vast that they seemed to stretch into eternity. Every guest arriving tonight would be someone important, someone used to having the world bend to their will. And Aisha knew that one wrong move could undo everything she had worked so hard to achieve. But she carried herself with calm precision, each action deliberate, every smile measured yet genuine. This was her world tonight, even if for only a few hours, and she intended to navigate it with grace. Before we dive into what happened that evening, I want to take a moment to connect with all of you. Tell me, who are you, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city and share this moment with me. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up so you don't miss any of the incredible stories we share here. Now, let's get back to the story. The moment the first guests began to arrive, Aisha felt the usual tension that accompanied a room filled with the city's elite. Each handshake, each polite smile was carefully observed, and she could feel the invisible weight of scrutiny pressing down on her. Victoria Langford, the hostess, watched everything with sharp, calculating eyes, her smile flawless but icy, hiding a storm of judgment that only Aisha could feel. Victoria's gaze swept over the staff like a hawk circling prey, landing briefly on Aisha, a silent message in her stare. Remember your place. Aisha had dealt with judgment before, subtle slights and whispered comments, but there was something in Victoria's presence tonight that made the air feel heavier, colder, as if a single misstep could unravel not just the evening, but her entire career. The party progressed, music floating softly, the clinking of glasses mingling with polite conversation, and Aisha moved among the guests with efficiency and care, refilling drinks, adjusting chairs, and ensuring that the atmosphere remained elegant. It was during one of these moments that Victoria decided the time was right to make her statement, to assert her dominance in the way she knew best by humiliating Aisha in front of everyone. Victoria's voice, sweet but carrying an unmistakable edge, cut through the room as she called Aisha over. Every conversation halted mid-sentence, eyes turning to watch the unfolding drama. Aisha approached, heart racing, unsure what this would be about. The guests looked on with polite curiosity, unaware of the simmering tension that had been building for months. Victoria's words were precise, designed to wound, to remind Aisha of her place in the household and in society. She spoke of expectations, of boundaries, of what it meant to be someone who belonged in this environment. Aisha felt the sting of each word, but she had learned the power of calm and dignity. She responded with quiet composure, her voice steady even as the room seemed to shrink around her. Victoria's smile did not falter, but the eyes of the guests began to shift, noticing the contrast between Aisha's grace and Victoria's rigid authority. The tension escalated quickly, subtle glances between the guests revealing their discomfort. Some shifting in their seats, sensing the unfairness of the moment even if they could not yet articulate it. Olivia Langford, the young daughter, had been watching from a distance, her expression a mix of confusion and concern, sensing instinctively that something was wrong. She had always admired Aisha's kindness, the way she patiently helped with homework and listened when Olivia needed to talk. Now, watching her being publicly demeaned, Olivia's small hands clenched, her eyes wide with disbelief. Aisha's training and years of careful observation had prepared her for many things, but tonight required more than skill. It required courage, She had to find a way to navigate this storm without letting it destroy her. The guests began to murmur softly among themselves, the hum of conversation punctuated by occasional awkward laughter as Victoria continued, her words sharp and carefully constructed, a performance meant to display control. But in her attempt to dominate, Victoria had overlooked one critical element, the resilience and intelligence of the woman standing before her. Aisha remained poised, acknowledging Victoria's statements with respect, never retaliating, but letting her actions speak louder than words. As the evening wore on, it became clear that Victoria's strategy was faltering. The guests' attention shifted subtly, their admiration growing for the quiet strength and professionalism that Aisha displayed under pressure. James Langford, who had been observing quietly, began to recognize the stark contrast between his wife's cruelty and Aisha's grace. His eyes followed every interaction, noting the subtle details that many others overlooked. The way Aisha anticipated guest needs, the calm and precise way she handled every challenge that arose. It was at this moment that a subtle realization settled over James. Tonight Aisha was not just a staff member. She was the moral compass of the room, the measure of true character, and the one whose dignity could not be taken. As the final guests mingled near the center of the room, a small crisis arose with the catering service. A tray of drinks tipped, spilling across the marble floor and threatening to disrupt the party. In an instant, Aisha acted, swiftly gathering the tray, rescuing the glasses, and calmly ensuring that no one was injured or embarrassed. The movement was seamless, confident, and executed with a precision that drew the eyes of every guest. In that moment, the power dynamics subtly shifted. Whispers began circulating, and the cold weight of judgment that Victoria had relied upon began to crack. People were noticing her actions, her professionalism, and the courage it took to remain composed under such public scrutiny. Victoria's control of the evening began to crumble. Even as she tried to maintain her composure, her carefully constructed authority beginning to show cracks for the first time in months. The air in the room was thick with anticipation, every attendee sensing the climax approaching, waiting for the inevitable confrontation that would define the evening. Aisha, despite the humiliation she had endured, continued her work with unwavering dedication, each gesture a testament to her character. And in the eyes of the guests, the distinction between dignity and arrogance became unmistakable. The subtle shift had begun, and everyone could feel it tonight. The outcome would not be dictated by wealth or status, but by courage, integrity, and the unshakable grace of one remarkable woman. The tension in the room grew palpable as Victoria Langford's carefully constructed facade began to crack. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, whispering softly to one another, sensing the collapse of the rigid hierarchy that had dominated the evening. Olivia Langford stepped closer to Aisha, her young face etched with concern, her hands fidgeting as she tried to make sense of the spectacle. Victoria, sensing the shift in energy, attempted one final assertion of control, her voice rising slightly as she reminded everyone of Aisha's place. But it was different now, less commanding, less believable. Aisha felt the weight of every gaze upon her, every expectation, yet she refused to falter. She understood, more clearly than anyone in the room, that dignity was not something handed down by wealth or privilege. It was something earned through composure, skill, and integrity. James Langford, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying undeniable authority. "Victoria," he said, each syllable deliberate, "this has gone far enough." The room went silent, the guests holding their breath, waiting to see how Victoria would respond. Her triumphant smile faltered as she realized that the support she had counted on from her husband had vanished. James continued, "Aisha Carter is not here to be judged by your insecurities. She has conducted herself with more grace tonight than anyone in this room, including you. She deserves respect, not humiliation." A murmur ran through the crowd, soft at first, then growing as the truth of his words settled over the attendees. Whispers of admiration for Aisha replaced the awkward discomfort that had dominated moments before. Victoria's face paled, her carefully applied makeup failing to mask the growing panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing that any further words would only deepen the impression that she had been unjust, cruel, and petty. Olivia took a tentative step forward, her small voice cutting through the tension with unflinching honesty. Aisha helps me with my homework. She listens when I'm upset. She's kind. She's never done anything wrong. The room seemed to pause as the simple, sincere testimony of a 14-year-old girl resonated more powerfully than any adult argument could. Aisha felt a lump in her throat but remained composed, letting the validation come from actions rather than words. She had endured criticism, judgment, and humiliation. Yet here was proof that true character could not be diminished by the arrogance of others. James moved closer to Aisha, draping his finely tailored jacket over her shoulders as a gesture of protection and solidarity. The warmth of the fabric was a quiet reassurance, a symbol that she was recognized and valued in a world that had tried to belittle her. "No one should ever be treated this way," James said softly, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Not in my home, not anywhere. Tonight we see the measure of someone's character, and it is not determined by wealth, status, or the color of their skin, but by the courage to stand tall under pressure." The guests nodded, some looking ashamed at their earlier silence, others impressed by Aisha's unwavering poise. Victoria's attempts to justify her actions fell flat, her words echoing hollowly in the now shifted atmosphere. Aisha, still holding herself with calm dignity, finally spoke, her voice steady but soft. "I only wanted to do my job well. I never meant to cause conflict or discomfort." James shook his head firmly, his expression resolute. "You have done nothing wrong. The only fault here lies in the cruelty and insecurity that some choose to let define them." The room held its collective breath as the transformation of the evening became undeniable. Victoria stood isolated, her influence evaporating in the face of clear evidence that her judgment had been unfair and her actions damaging. Olivia, sensing the finality of the moment, stepped closer to Aisha once more, wrapping her small arms around her waist. "Please don't leave," she whispered. "We need you here." The sincerity of a child's plea struck everyone, cutting through the tension with a simple truth. Kindness and integrity outshine status and privilege. The remaining guests began to approach Aisha, offering congratulations, handshakes, and words of admiration. A few business contacts handed her their cards, speaking of future opportunities and partnerships, recognition flowing naturally from merit rather than pretense. Aisha, overwhelmed but composed, accepted their praise with gratitude, her eyes meeting James's for a brief moment of quiet understanding. The unspoken acknowledgement was clear. Tonight had changed everything. Victoria, confronted by the consequences of her actions, finally withdrew, leaving the room with a mixture of anger, humiliation, and disbelief. The veneer of control she had maintained so meticulously was gone, replaced by a stark reality that respect could not be demanded, only earned. As the evening wound down, the guests departed, many lingering to express support for Aisha and to acknowledge the courage it had taken to endure the public ordeal with such composure. James remained by her side, offering reassurance and a promise that her contributions and integrity would always be recognized and valued. Olivia, still holding her hand, whispered once more, "You're the bravest person I know." The words, simple yet profound, captured the essence of the night. True strength and heroism are often found in those who face adversity with dignity and compassion. Aisha's journey, from preparation to public humiliation to ultimate recognition, had become a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for oneself, and the impact of integrity in the face of injustice. The party, once intended to showcase wealth and status, had transformed into a demonstration of moral courage, leaving an indelible impression on every attendee. Months later, Aisha received not only professional recognition, but opportunities that reflected her talent, intelligence, and character. The Langford family, particularly Victoria, had begun a slow process of reflection and change. While Olivia continued to benefit from Aisha's guidance and mentorship, their bond stronger than ever. The story of that night, whispered among guests and retold in hushed tones, became a legend in social circles, not because of the wealth on display, but because of the courage, dignity, and justice that had triumphed in the most unexpected of places. Aisha Carter had turned a moment of humiliation into a demonstration of unshakable strength, proving that true respect and recognition are earned through character and action, not by privilege or power. And in that triumph, the real lesson became clear. In a world quick to judge, the quiet strength of those who act with integrity can change lives, redefine perceptions, and inspire even the most unlikely of witnesses to reconsider their own understanding of justice and fairness. If you've been inspired by Aisha's story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear that courage, dignity, and perseverance can turn even the darkest moments into a victory worth remembering.